The assumption. The Hall of Concord floated in silent orbit above the gas giant Virex 9, a world chosen specifically because no one owned it. That was the Council's idea of neutrality, cold, distant, and lifeless. Inside the vast chamber, representatives from over 40 galactic species sat in layered rings of levitating platforms. Scales shimmered beside fur. Chitin clicked beside polished metal exoskeletons. Ancient beings who had outlived stars shared space with younger races still clinging to their first colonies. At the very center hovered a single circular dais. Empty. That, in itself, caused unease. "They are late," hissed Councillor Threxel of the Car Dominion, his elongated neck curling in irritation. Again. Several eyes, compound, glowing, and mechanical, shifted toward the vacant platform. "The humans have always been informal," replied Archivist Seln, her voice calm but tight. "It is their way." Threxel let out a dry, clicking laugh. "Their way is avoidance. Delay. Hesitation." A ripple of agreement moved through the chamber. For nearly a century humanity had been an enigma. They expanded rapidly, yes, but cautiously. They fortified borders. They negotiated relentlessly. They intervened in conflicts only when pushed, and even then their responses seemed restrained. At least that was the belief. "The coming conflict will test every member species," intoned High Moderator Kael'vor, his massive stone-like form glowing faintly as he spoke. "The Nullrith advance is not rumor. Their fleets are already moving." That drew real concern. The Nullrith were ancient, relentless, and utterly without mercy. Entire civilizations had vanished under their advance. Worlds stripped. Stars poisoned. "We must decide," Kael'vor continued, "who will stand and who will withdraw." Withdraw. The word lingered. Several counselors glanced, intentionally or not, toward the empty dais. Counselor Illis of the Averin Fold folded her translucent wings. "If history is any guide, humanity will fortify Sol and its inner colonies, then retreat behind diplomacy and distance." "Yes," Threxel agreed quickly. "They fear prolonged war. Their species has suffered too many internal conflicts. They avoid total war whenever possible. They talk loudly," another counselor added, voice dripping with disdain, "but act cautiously. Overwhelming force only in defense. Never in conquest." High Moderator Kael'vor was silent for a long moment. "And yet," he rumbled, "they were invited here for a reason." As if summoned by the words themselves, the air above the central dais shimmered. A human figure resolved into view. No escort. No guards. No display of power. Just one person. She wore a simple dark uniform. No medals, no dramatic armor. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her posture straight but relaxed. A data slate rested under one arm. Ambassador Mara Kincaid of Earth. The chamber reacted instantly. Whispers. Clicks. Low-frequency rumbles of disapproval. She stepped onto the dais and waited. Did not bow. Did not apologize. Just waited. "Ambassador Kincaid," Kael'vor said at last. "You are late." Mara inclined her head slightly. "No. I'm precisely on time." That earned her several sharp looks. Threxel leaned forward. "Your species faces annihilation alongside the rest of us, and you treat this gathering casually?" Mara met his gaze without flinching. "If we were facing annihilation, Counselor, I would not be here." The room chilled. Archivist Seln narrowed her eyes. "That is an interesting claim." "It's a factual one," Mara replied calmly. Kael'vor raised a massive hand, quieting the rising murmurs. "We are here to determine responses to the Nullrith advance. Many believe humanity will abstain from direct engagement." Mara's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Believe whatever you like," she said. "We don't require consensus." That did it. Threxel slammed a clawed limb against his console. "There. Arrogance masking fear. Humans always speak boldly when distance protects them." "Fear." Mara echoed softly. She set her data slate down on the dais. "Let me ask the council a question," she continued. "When a predator approaches your young, do you call that fear, or instinct?" No one answered. "You've watched humanity for a century," she went on. "You've seen us avoid wars of conquest. Avoid pointless bloodshed. Avoid escalation." She looked around the chamber, meeting eye after eye. "And you mistook restraint for weakness." The temperature in the hall dropped another degree. Counselor Illis tilted her head. "If humans do not fear war, Ambassador, why do you delay action while the Nullrith advance?" Mara tapped the slate once. A holographic projection burst into existence above the dais. Star maps. Fleet trajectories. highlighted regions glowing red. The Nullrith advance, mapped in frightening detail. Then something else appeared. Human fleets. Not clustered around Sol. Not defensive formations. They were spread, quietly, across dozens of systems. Unnoticed. Because, Mara said, her voice steady, you don't hunt a storm by charging into it. The chamber erupted into noise. What is this? Drexel demanded. These deployments were not reported. No, Mara agreed. They weren't. Kael'vor leaned forward, stone eyes glowing brighter. Are these combat-ready formations? Mara finally smiled. Yes. Fear flickered across several alien faces. But you've made no declarations, Archivist Seln said. No ultimatums. No demands. Mara's smile faded. Declarations are for people who need permission. Silence fell like a physical weight. Drexel recoiled slightly. You would act without council approval? Mara looked at him as if the question itself were strange. We already are. That was when the first alert chimed through the Hall of Concord. Then another. And another. Data streams flooded the chamber. Kael'vor's voice dropped. Report. A panicked aide responded. Long-range sensors confirm, multiple Nullrith Vanguard fleets have gone dark. The chamber froze. Gone dark? Illis whispered. Destroyed. Mara picked up her slate. No, she said quietly. Removed. Drexel stared at her, dread pooling in his multiple eyes. By whom? Mara's gaze hardened, not with anger but with certainty. By us. The council sat in stunned silence as the truth began to dawn. Humanity had not feared war. Humanity had been waiting. And somewhere in the void, far beyond the council's reach, the first moment had already happened. The Hall of Concord had never been silent like this. Not during wars. Not during collapses. Not even during first contact disasters. But now, after Ambassador Mara Kincaid's quiet revelation, the chamber felt hollow as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. High Moderator Kael'vor broke the stillness at last. Define, removed. Mara did not hesitate. She turned her data slate so the projection widened, filling the hall with rotating three-dimensional imagery. These were Nullrith Vanguard groups, she explained. Scouting fleets. Fast, aggressive, lightly shielded, but designed to tear through early resistance. A cluster of crimson symbols blinked into view. They entered 3 frontier systems 42 standard hours ago. The symbols flickered. Then vanished. Counselor Illis felt her wings stiffen. No debris field is visible. Correct, Mara said. No wreckage. No radiation spikes. No emergency signals. Drexel leaned forward, his voice tight. That is impossible. Even annihilation leaves scars. Not if you don't explode them, Mara replied. A chill rippled across the chamber. Kael'vor's stone fingers curled slightly. Explain. Mara paused as if choosing her words carefully. Humans learned something early in our history, she said. Total destruction is loud. Messy. It warns the enemy. She tapped the slate again. The projection shifted. Human vessels, sleek, dark, almost featureless, slipped through space like shadows. They did not fire bright beams or launch swarms of missiles. Instead, the visuals showed precise points of contact. Silent pulses. Internal system collapses. The Nullrith ships simply stopped. Life support failed. Navigation died. Command cores went dark. They were boarded, Mara said. Drexel recoiled. Boarded? In open space. Yes. That is madness, another counselor snapped. The Nullrith are infamous for close-quarters slaughter. Mara met his gaze calmly. So are we. The council erupted into overlapping voices. Why was this not disclosed? You violated council protocols. This is escalation. Kael'vor slammed a heavy limb against his platform, sending a deep resonant shock through the chamber. Enough. The noise died down. Ambassador, the moderator said, why now? Mara inhaled slowly. Because 43 hours ago, she said, the Nullrith erased a world called Halcyon Reach. Several counselors stiffened. That system was neutral, Illis whispered. It was, Mara agreed. 17 million civilians. Mining families. Trade hubs. No military presence. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. We received the distress call, she continued. And we responded. Drexel's mandibles clicked nervously. With silence. With certainty. Kael'vor's glow dimmed slightly. Your species did not bring this incident before the council. Mara's eyes hardened. By the time the council finished debating terminology, Halcyon Reach was already dead. A heavy truth settled over them. You assume, Mara went on, that avoiding war means fearing it. That restraint is weakness. That patience is hesitation. She gestured to the vanishing red symbols. We avoided war because we were preparing to finish it. Fear crept into places where arrogance once lived. Counselor Illis swallowed. If humanity has already engaged, what happens next? Mara did not answer immediately. Instead, she changed the projection again. A new image filled the hall. A Nullrith command world. Massive. Heavily fortified. Surrounded by layered defense platforms. Gasps echoed through the chamber. That world, Threxel rasped, has never been breached. Mara nodded. We know. Then why show it to us? Kael'vor asked. Mara looked directly at him. Because 30 minutes ago, she said, we sent them a message. A council aide cried out as fresh data poured in. Moderator. A transmission, Nullrith origin, but altered. The hall's central display shifted to a live feed. The image was shaky, distorted, but unmistakable. A Nullrith command chamber, chaos erupting as lights flickered, alarms screamed, and towering insectoid figures turned in panic toward the camera. Then a voice cut through the noise. Come, human. Cole. This is Captain Reyes of the United Earth Fleet. The feed stabilized. We are not here to conquer you, the voice continued. We are not here to negotiate. The Nullrith figures froze. We are here because you touched our people. The feed cut. Silence followed. Threxel's voice was barely a whisper. You challenged them, directly? Mara's expression did not change. No, she said. We informed them. Kael'vor leaned back slowly. You risked drawing their full force. Mara nodded once. That was always inevitable. A younger counselor spoke, fear creeping into her tone. If humans truly do not fear war, what do you fear? Mara considered the question, then answered honestly. We fear being too late. The implications hit like a supernova. The Nullrith advance had not slowed. It had been provoked. And humanity had pulled the trigger, not in anger, not in panic, but with intent. Kael'vor looked around the chamber, seeing the realization spread. The galaxy had misunderstood humans. And now, the cost of that misunderstanding was about to be paid. Far away, beyond the Council's reach, human fleets shifted position. And the real war was about to begin. The first scream came from a machine. It was sharp, electronic, and utterly out of place in the polished calm of the Hall of Concord. A warning tone, ancient and rarely used, ripped through the chamber and forced every counselor to look toward the central display. 8 voices overlapped in panic. Emergency priority signal. Origin, deep space relay. Encryption, human military. High Moderator Kael'vor rose to his full height, stone plates grinding softly. On screen. The hologram snapped into focus. Stars. Blackness. Then, movement. A Nullrith battle group, larger than any scouting force, drifted across the projection. Dozens of ships, jagged and organic, their hulls pulsing faintly like living things. This was not a vanguard. This was a hammer. Counselor Threxel recoiled. That fleet was not on our projections. Mara Kincaid didn't look surprised. That's because it changed course, she said. 6 minutes ago. The aide's voice trembled. They're accelerating toward. The display updated. A single blue-white marker pulsed at the center of the map. A human colony. Not a fortress world. Not a military hub. A population center. Counselor Illis felt her wings lock rigid. That world has no major defenses. Mara's jaw tightened. It doesn't need them. Threxel spun toward her. This is what comes of your provocation. You brought this down on us. Mara finally turned, eyes cold and sharp. No. This is what happens when predators realize they've been noticed. Kael'vor raised a massive hand. Ambassador, can humanity intercept? Mara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she activated her slate. Across the chamber, every council console lit up simultaneously. Human fleet identifiers bloomed into existence. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. They weren't forming lines. They weren't retreating. They were converging. A younger counselor whispered, they're surrounding the Nullrith fleet. No, Mara corrected softly. We're closing the trap. The projection zoomed in. Human vessels emerged from void black stealth, their hulls absorbing light, their drives burning a muted, terrifying blue. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't broadcast challenges. They moved with absolute precision. Kael'vor's voice was low. You planned this. Mara nodded once. For months. Threxel's mandibles trembled. This is not defense. This is an ambush. Yes, Mara said. It is. The Nullrith fleet reacted instantly. Organic hulls flared as weapons charged. Space warped as they attempted to break formation. Too late. The humans didn't fire first. They cut. Invisible waves rippled outward, localized gravity shear fields collapsing Nullrith formations, twisting space just enough to tear coordination apart. Human strike craft poured through the gaps like liquid shadow. Boarding signals lit the display. Counselors stared in horror. They're sending soldiers inside, Illis breathed. Into live ships. Humans specialize in close quarters, Mara said quietly. We evolved fighting in confined spaces. The feed split. Multiple live views appeared. Inside a Nullrith vessel, panic reigned. Alarms screamed as human figures moved through smoke and darkness, armored, fast, terrifyingly coordinated. They didn't roar. They didn't hesitate. They advanced. A Nullrith warrior lunged. A human sidestepped, planted a magnetic charge and shoved the creature backward into its own command node. The feed cut. Another view replaced it. A human marine, helmet cracked, blood floating in zero-G, dragged a wounded alien civilian behind cover while returning fire. Counselor Illis gasped. Why are they protecting non-combatants? Mara's voice softened, but only slightly. Because we decide who deserves to be fought. Threxel's voice shook. This is not war. This is annihilation. Mara shook her head. No. Annihilation would be easier. The chamber fell silent as the Nullrith fleet began to collapse, not in explosions but in surrender signals. Systems failing. Command cores locked down from the inside. One by one the crimson markers dimmed. Then stopped. The aide stared at her console in disbelief. Moderator, the Nullrith fleet has ceased all hostile action. Kael'vor exhaled slowly. How many human casualties? Mara didn't look away from the display. More than we wanted. Fewer than they expected. Threxel slumped back, horror etched across his features. You could have warned us. Mara finally turned fully toward the council. We did, she said. For 100 years. Her gaze swept the chamber. You saw our restraint and called it fear. You saw our patience and called it weakness. You saw us avoid war and assumed we couldn't face it. She stepped closer to the edge of the dais. You were wrong. A final transmission cut through the air. Nullrith command frequency. The image showed a towering Nullrith leader, scarred, trembling, surrounded by human soldiers standing silently behind the camera. Its voice shook as it spoke. We withdraw. A collective breath was released across the Hall of Concord. We will retreat beyond contested space, the Nullrith continued. We acknowledge human dominion. The feed ended. Silence followed. Then, fear. Not of the Nullrith. Of humanity. Kael'vor spoke carefully. Ambassador Kincaid, what will humanity do now? Mara's answer was immediate. We'll finish what we started. Threxel stared at her. You mean conquest? Mara shook her head. No, she said. Correction. She turned back to the star map where human fleets now held the void. The galaxy believed humans avoided war, she said. So we let it believe that. Her eyes hardened. But now the belief is no longer useful. Somewhere deep in space, human fleets realigned, not defensively but decisively. The moment had passed. The truth was out. And the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The Hall of Concord did not erupt into chaos. That frightened the council more than screaming ever could. No one spoke. No one moved. 40 civilizations sat frozen, staring at the star map where human fleet markers now formed a vast, deliberate pattern across known space. Not random. Not reactive. Designed. High Moderator Kael'vor broke the silence at last, his voice slow and heavy. The balance has shifted. No one argued. Counselor Threxel looked smaller than he had hours before, his posture collapsed, mandibles twitching as if trying to form words that would not come. You planned this, he said weakly to Mara Kincaid. Not just the battle. All of it. Mara did not deny it. Humans don't like surprises, she replied. We remove uncertainty wherever possible. Counselor Illis folded her wings tightly around herself. You maneuvered fleets without triggering panic. You allowed the council to believe you would withdraw. Yes, Mara said. Fear makes people unpredictable. Complacency makes them honest. That stung. Across the chamber, aides began receiving new data streams, emergency signals from distant systems. One by one, counselors' consoles lit up. Withdrawals. Surrenders. Species-wide emergency protocols being enacted. The Nulrith retreat has caused secondary collapses, an aide reported. Several war-aligned factions are abandoning contested territories. Kael'vor closed his eyes briefly. A domino effect. Mara nodded. Predator hierarchies are fragile. Remove the apex and the rest scatter. Threxel's voice cracked. You didn't just stop a war. No, Mara said quietly. We ended one before it could become endless. A counselor from the outer ring spoke, her voice trembling. What happens to those who stood aside? Who did nothing while the Nulrith advanced? Mara met her gaze evenly. That depends on what they do next. Fear rippled again. Another transmission cut through the chamber. This one marked civilian priority. A hollow image appeared of a shattered colony world. Cities scarred but standing. Rescue craft descending in organized waves. Human vessels. Medical ships. Engineering platforms. Supply carriers. Counselor Illis stared. You're deploying relief fleets, already? Mara nodded. War doesn't end when the shooting stops. That's just when responsibility begins. Threxel swallowed hard. You spend lives and resources so freely. You fight without hesitation. How can you do both? Mara's voice softened, but her words were sharper than any weapon. Because we don't fight for glory, she said. We fight so others don't have to learn how. Kael'vor studied her carefully. And the council? Mara raised an eyebrow. What about it? You have undermined its authority, the moderator said. Some will call this a coup. Mara leaned forward slightly. Authority that fails to act isn't authority, she replied. It's decoration. Several counselors flinched. An elder from a militarized species finally spoke, voice low and reverent. Your soldiers boarded enemy ships to protect civilians who were not their own. Yes. You could have destroyed the fleet outright. Yes. Why didn't you? Mara didn't answer right away. When humans wage total war, she said at last, we don't leave room for misunderstanding. Today was not that. A chill settled over the room. Threxel whispered, then what was it? Mara straightened. A warning. Outside the Hall of Concord, the stars shifted as human fleets repositioned. Not advancing, not retreating, but holding. Every major hyperlane. Every strategic junction. Not conquest. Containment. An aide approached Kael'vor, whispering urgently. The moderator's stone features tightened. We are receiving formal requests, he announced. Dozens of species seeking protection. Protection. Not alliance. Not trade. Protection. Kael'vor looked at Mara. Will humanity answer them? She nodded once. Case by case. And the price? Threxel asked bitterly. Mara met his gaze without malice. Participation, she said. When the next call comes, no one gets to hide. Silence answered her. Somewhere deep within the council chamber, something old and fragile cracked. The belief that war could be delegated. The belief that power could be borrowed without consequence. The belief that humans were reluctant warriors. All gone. As the meeting drew toward an uneasy close, Kael'vor spoke one final time. The galaxy will remember this day, he said. Mara paused at the edge of the dais. So will we, she replied. Because this is the day we stop pretending. Beyond the station, human fleets held steady, calm, disciplined, unstoppable. The reckoning was complete. What came next would define the future. The galaxy did not return to normal. It relearned itself. Weeks passed after the human containment line stabilized. The hyperlanes remained open, trade resumed cautiously, and war fleets stayed docked. Not because they were ordered to, but because no one wanted to test what would happen if they didn't. Human ships still held position. Silent. Watchful. Patient. Across dozens of systems, relief efforts continued. Human engineers rebuilt cities they had never seen before. Medics treated species whose biology they had studied only in simulations. Supply convoys moved with mechanical precision, guarded by warships that never powered down their weapons. The message was clear. Humanity had not come to rule. Humanity had come to stay. The Council's reckoning. The Galactic Council reconvened under conditions that would have been unthinkable months earlier. No grand banners. No ceremonial fleets. Only facts. High Moderator Kael'vor stood before a reduced assembly. Several council seats were empty. Civilizations that had collapsed, fractured, or withdrawn entirely from interstellar politics after the Nullrith defeat. History does not record intentions, Kael'vor said gravely. Only outcomes. His gaze drifted to the human delegation. Humanity's actions have altered the strategic and moral architecture of this galaxy. No one objected. Counselor Threxel, once loud and dismissive, now spoke carefully. We believed humans feared war because they delayed it. Mara Kincaid listened, arms crossed. We were wrong, Threxel continued. They delayed it because they understood it. A murmur of agreement passed through the chamber. Counselor Illis unfolded her wings. You did what we could not. You intervened decisively, but you did not dominate. That was a choice, Mara said. Not an instinct. Kael'vor inclined his head. Which brings us to the proposal. The chamber lights dimmed. A new charter appeared, drafted jointly by human strategists and neutral council members. The Concord of Mutual Obligation. No permanent rulers. No borrowed militaries. No silent spectators. If one civilization committed genocide, expansionist war, or systematic oppression, all signatories would respond, logistically, economically, and if necessary militarily. No exceptions. Threxel swallowed. This binds everyone. Yes, Mara replied. That's the point. And if humanity is the aggressor? Another counselor asked. Mara didn't hesitate. Then you respond to us. That stunned them more than any fleet maneuver ever had. Kael'vor studied her. You would accept that? Mara nodded. Power without accountability is just tyranny with better speeches. The vote was taken. For the first time in Galactic Council history, the decision was unanimous. The question humanity asked itself. Back on Earth, the celebrations were muted. There were no parades. No statues raised. Instead, classrooms filled with debates. News feeds ran discussions, not propaganda. Veterans spoke openly about fear, loss, and restraint. Humanity had won. But victory came with a cost heavier than casualties. Responsibility. Admiral Reyes stood on a quiet observation deck, watching stars slide past as the fleet adjusted positions. Mara joined him. They're afraid of us, he said. She nodded. They should be. That's not an answer, Reyes replied. No, she admitted. It's a warning. Reyes turned to her. We've become the line between peace and extinction. Yes. And lines like that don't last forever. Mara looked out at the galaxy, vast, broken, hopeful, dangerous. Then we make sure what comes after us is better, she said. Or we step aside when it's ready. Reyes exhaled slowly. You think the galaxy will ever stop testing us? Mara smiled faintly. Humans test gravity by jumping, she said. Other species test power by pushing. The legacy. Decades later, historians would argue about the moment everything changed. Some pointed to the first human fleet translation. Others to the Nullrith surrender. But most agreed on a quieter truth. It was the moment humanity chose restraint after victory. Children across the galaxy learned a new phrase, translated into hundreds of languages. Do not wake the humans, unless you are ready to become better. Human war doctrine became required study in military academies, not for its brutality but for its discipline. Because the galaxy learned something terrifying and hopeful at the same time. Humans did not fear war. They feared unnecessary war. And when forced to fight, they fought not to conquer, but to end it. Final transmission, a human fleet command. A message echoed quietly across council space, archived for eternity. We are not your masters. We are not your enemies. We are the proof that restraint is a choice, and choices have consequences. Stand with us and the galaxy stands. Stand aside and the galaxy burns. This is humanity. We do not fear war. We fear what happens if no one stops it. The stars remain silent. Not in fear, but in understanding. The end.